you were the one pushing the others, but you did it mentally. We needed your head. And we worked so structured, so hard, so thorough for that many years before winning that gold medal in Tokyo after all that we put into it for such a long time, and really succeeding with all the elements. It felt like a puzzle of 10,000 pieces. And then I just put the last piece doing that race. My goal was to medal in Tokyo, and that was the 8 years before. So my plan was, do whatever I could for 8 years to be on that podium in Tokyo. And 8 years is quite a long time. Especially if you are 22.
First, when I read about everything you do, first I think, okay, this is Annika. And after I read more, this is actually Annika 2.0, Birgit. You are so busy, Birgit. How do you do it? This have to be planning on the highest level and time management on a higher level as well. How you do it, Birgit?
We would like to welcome Birgit Louise Røkkum Skarstein to our podcast. It is a true honor to have you. You are a star that we truly admire, both as an athlete and with the human qualities that you have. We admire how you always shed light of warmth, purpose, and passion wherever you go. How you are not just a source of positivity, but you are positivity itself. After an accident at the age of 19 that brought you into a year of surgery, challenges, and hospitalization, you became paralyzed after a procedure that did not go as planned. This did not stop you from living your life to the fullest. You became a full-time athlete, and you just retired after a legendary career. In para-rowing, you have won gold in the Olympics in Tokyo, silver in the Olympics in Paris. In the World Championship, you have won 6 gold medals, 1 silver and 1 bronze. In the European Championship, you won 4 gold medals. And in para cross-country skiing, an entire different sport, you also won a silver and 3 bronze medals. And the list goes on. You're a social entrepreneur, author, motivational speaker, soon to be a mother, and a ray of sunshine. Thank you for taking part in our podcast, and that we get the blessing of spending some time with a mastermind like you, the mastermind of one of the most absolutely inspiring people we know about. Welcome. How do you feel, Birgit?
Thank you. Oh gosh, I feel good. I feel good. It's summer, and as you said, I'm soon to be mother, so I'm pretty pregnant at the moment, and it's a totally new phase of life, but I love it, and I just feel really blessed.
Welcome so much, yeah, and thank you for you will come on our podcast. We appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to be here. I just love the concept of this podcast.
Oh, that sounds good. Good to hear. What is the hardest, to be on top athlete or to be pregnant?
That's actually a really good question. I'd say there's two different ways, two different difficulties. But I'd say that, as a top athlete, I would have schedules and very detailed planning of everything to do and how to get there, and be very on top and on point on all the capabilities of the body. But as pregnant, I think that's maybe one of the most fascinating aspects of it, is how the body can jump between different stages and conditions without warning, and have all these really weird symptoms, like, oh yeah, suddenly you're itching, and suddenly you're throwing up, suddenly your heart rate just bumps, and it's like a lottery every day. and I definitely see that I'm not as in control as I'm used to be for the last couple of years. But it's a journey and it's interesting, and it also just gives me it makes me very humble for what a lot of women has gone through throughout the years, and still, performing and either doing sports or being at work and watching children and doing the kind of hard labor that being pregnant actually is.
Nice to hear. Yeah, sounds like a roller coaster. This pregnancy.
It is, but it's interesting, and it's also, in a way, it does also feel like some kind of a season, right? Because you know what you are wanting in there in the end, and then it's all about living as according to that as possible. But I'd say that in sports, you can lean into it and then do everything you can to be as good as you could at one exact point, right? While during a pregnancy, it's different because your job could be, just to deliver that baby as well as you can, but then there's so many other demands because there's work, there's other obligations. It's just not as easy to just focus on that one task. And I think that's one of the aspects that drives key performance in very specific areas different than, having performance which is more distributed across several fields.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to ask you, what is the biggest highlight and the best moment in your career as an athlete?
I think that looking back at it, I just retired half a year ago. So now I've just had time to take a step outside, which is very different from being inside the bubble, because then you just keep on going. But after I've stepped out and looked back, I think that the highlight is the games in Tokyo, which were supposed to be in 2020, but they were postponed due to COVID, so they were in 2021. And we worked so structured, so hard, so thorough for that many years before. So winning that gold medal in Tokyo after all that we put into it for such a long time, and really succeeding with all the elements. It felt like a puzzle of 10,000 pieces. And then I just put the last piece doing that race. When you look at races, it's easy to think that the race is from start to finish. But the race has just started such a long time before, and then the race itself is just the final little puzzle. And in Tokyo, that placed pretty perfect.
Amazing, great to hear, and it's have been amazing to achieve that, and that's a feeling not many people in the world can feel in their lives to achieve the gold medal in the Olympic.
That was pretty special. And also it was very special in the way that there was no audience because of COVID, right? We were just, it was just quiet. When you cross the finish line and you have this picture of the crowds and how it would usually be in the World Championships or European Championships or the Olympics, there'd be crowds and cheering and friends and family, but it was just quiet. And I was taken off the water, did the press zone, and talked to the media, and then just put on the plane. And so it was very strange.
And as you say, there's so much hard work that lies behind a race like that. It's years and years of hard work and visualization. And I've heard in several podcasts that COVID was a rough time. You are very extroverted. You get energy from being with people. And during COVID, you lived in Oslo, as I understand it. So it was lockdown for a long time. And it was hard on your mental health, as I understand it. But you pushed through it. You worked so hard. And can you please just talk us through that little moment when crossing the finish line? What happens inside you then?
Well, at first I, in one way, just didn't believe that it happened because it's been such a big goal for such a long time. And I think that you put so much aside because of that goal. For example, I was supposed to carry my nephew. He was going to be baptized. And I was one of those like godmothers. And I couldn't go because, my sister lives a flight travel away, and I couldn't fly because of the risk of getting sick. And also just because when you have 3 sessions a day, when you have a flight trip in there, it just ruins the training day, right? So there's all those choices where you stick to the plan, but when it really costs, that you put on the table. And in one way, it just feels like many of them, they're not worth it unless you really, really succeed with what you're doing. And that's the vulnerable part of it, because you don't know whether you're going to succeed or not, right? And as a top athlete, you also know that things can happen, that it's so tight, because it's elite sports. It's so tight. Something can happen, and especially in the COVID games, as we call them, because we were tested every evening, and every morning someone were taken out because they tested positive. So, even until the very end, we didn't know who was actually going to show up on the starting line. So you had this little joker. So it felt in a way surreal, also because you just think of it and work towards it for such intensity and such a long time. And still you have to believe in it, because to be able to do it, you have to believe that you can. And in that way, it just turned out just the way I planned it. So the feeling crossing that finish line, and also, of course, you're just so tired. It's horrible. It's so painful. Rowing 2,000 meters is just so painful. So, and you can't breathe. Everything hurts. You almost like lose your eyesight because of all the lactic acid taking over your body. So just getting over that finish line and realizing that you made it, I was overwhelmed in a way. And then I think that the moment I really realized it was when I got to the finish dock, and my coach was there and he was crying. And that made me realize, okay, we actually, this is not a dream. We did it. We did it.
Amazing. And I read that you are still hold the world record in rowing now, yeah?
Yes, I do. I do.
Amazing.
It is absolutely incredible, everything that you have achieved in your career. And of course, there are tremendously much hard work. But one of the things that fascinates me the most is your mental strength and how you turn every challenge into an opportunity to become better. And this goes far back in time. And I've also heard in a podcast that the mental strength that you have, you can sit on a sofa and visualize the race that you're going to have, and you can achieve max pulse only 10 heartbeats away from full capacity. And that is amazing. Like, it's really hard to go through that and to see it so vividly, but that says a lot about how much you believe in yourself, I think, and how much you prepare for the race, how much you think about every eventuality. And this is a superpower. I am very inspired by that.
It's really interesting to see what you can make your mind do, right? Like, you just really live into it and lean into it and are really in the moment. And I think that's one of the things that sports does. And I'd say, elite performance, in a way that you really have to be there. You have to show up and be in the moment. And also, it's about visualizing what you're going to do to train on it as much as you can, right? To know. So what we do before races is that I'd visualize the whole race stroke by stroke. So I'd go through every stroke throughout the race and visualize how to do it. And visualize in my head, but also just physically sitting and doing the stroke, which is obviously not as powerful as being in a boat, but just simulating all the movements, from the fingertips to the shoulders to the breath, because it's all about finding those patterns and knowing what to do. And then I'd also visualize the different ways that the race could go.
Mhm.
So if this happens, I'd do that. If that happens, I'd do this. And then I'd have like 5 different plans or 6 different plans. And that's also just because when you get out there, you don't have the time to think,
Mhm.
because then you can lose really valuable time. So you just need to respond, you need to react, and when you've thought through everything that can happen, it's easier to know what to do because you don't have to use any time or capacity on making judgments.
Mhm.
And also you don't make bad decisions. Or you try to not make bad decisions by already having a plan before.
Oh.
So about visualization, yeah. How
Mm.
important do you think it is for people to do the visualization when you compete at the highest level? How much does it affect your performance?
I think it depends on the sports, it depends on you as an athlete. But for me, it was very important because it was about preparing for whatever might come. And it's also about really being in the moment, because in many ways you could be distracted. There's so many things that can happen. It's about, steering your mind into the things that you can do. So it's about steering your mind into focusing on what you can do with what you have, where you're uh, at every time, and not being distracted. Um, and being in control of your focus, because you need that focus to be fully engaged in what you're doing and how to handle it. So it's a really interesting state of mind, because while you're competing, you're so much in the moment that you're completely there, but still you steer, at least I did, I steered my attention to the things and the tasks to do. Also not to drown in the sensation of pain, for example, because it is really painful and you're short of breath, and it's uncomfortable and your body just wants you to stop. And then rather keeping your focus on how to drop the oar into the water, how to breathe, how to relax your shoulders, how to do the things that's needed to be done to be able to row fast. And when I enter the finish line, very often I would not remember much of the races because I was just so there. Uh, and and when I almost didn't remember the races, that usually meant that the races went pretty well. So you have to evaluate pretty quickly too.
Mhm.
And that's also a really important issue, though, that you'd go into the races with a couple of tasks, a couple of things to do, and then you'd leave them, you'd evaluate pretty quickly 1 thing that you need to do better and 3 things that you did well.
Mhm.
And we do the same in training,
Mhm.
every training, 1 thing that you need to do better and 3 things that you did well. And then you bring them into the next session.
I think that's a great way to learn, because then you focus about what's good and you focus about the improvement all along. But it makes me wonder, how long time after the accident did you decide to become a top athlete?
Yes, that was definitely not my plan.
Mhm.
My plan was just to get back into my life. And then training was a part of that because I wanted to make sure that I had as strong body as I could. I was 20 when I had the spinal cord injury. And I know that, physically, you have the best conditions to build muscle mass until you're 30. So I just really wanted to get stronger because I realized if my arms are to carry my whole body and do the job of my legs for the rest of my life, I need them to be endurant and I need them to be strong. And I need to be in control. I need to have a high level of body control because I have to compensate for the abilities that I've lost. For example, I have less of a balance. So being able to, instead of keeping that balance with my hip, which is normal when you sit. I need to keep it with my shoulders, which needs me to be very aware of tiny movements and also strong enough to keep the positions in a way that's not going to injure me later. So those kind of things. And I also just wanted to be as independent as I could. And to be able to be independent, to move up hills. Suddenly, like small hills that you wouldn't think of as a hill when you were walking them, they will be hills when you're doing them in a wheelchair, right? It's just a little bit of a more struggle getting up and down from sidewalks, getting onto the train, carrying things, right? When you can't carry them on your legs and I suddenly have to carry them on my lap or on my shoulders. I just need to be stronger to compensate. So that was my main focus for the couple of years after the injury. But then sport was a part of my active rehab, and I did pretty well pretty early and found it very interesting because I wanted to work with society and I wanted to work with the things that we can do better and more inclusion, and I from being walking until suddenly being in a wheelchair, I just saw a huge difference. And figured, okay, so there's a couple of things that we need to work on that needs to get better. And I also realized that sport is such a powerful force to do that because sports is about ability. And especially, I'd say in para sports, it's not about your disability, it's about your ability, and that's what you compete in, which is a very nice way of showing that what you don't have is not as important as what you do have. So it was a combination of wanting to train more and better and also use my 20s to build muscles and capacity, and the fact that I saw the potential of sport as being a societal game changer and how, performing well. But to have a voice, you need to perform well, right? It's at least, it's easier to be heard if you also perform. So that was what took me into that world, and then I just got completely mesmerized by it. So I fell in love with sports, and then I was sold.
Great to hear. And I was so impressed about your mindset when you lie in the hospital bed and you was paralyzed and you was not sure if you can walk again or not. And people around you, oh, this is so terrible. And you was positive. You say, okay, we see. Maybe I get back my feeling in my leg again, but no, I will use my wheelchair as my best friend. And you write the appreciation list.
Yeah.
I am happy for the people, my family, my friend, the community, and I gonna be useful and have purpose, and I gonna be a lot out in the nature. And it could be so much worse. I can be in a terrible car accident or have a terrible disease. And it was so amazing. You was in a terrible situation, but you focus on the good things. How did you develop this great mindset?
I think it was important for me to remember what I had, because when I was just paralyzed in hospital, it's very easy to think of all the things I didn't have, right? Because I could feel it very clearly. I was having trouble just sitting up straight because, I'd lose my balance and fall over. And also everyone that came into that hospital or to visit, my friends and family, they'd all go like, "Oh, how are your legs doing? This is so horrible." Talking about all the things that were unsure and the things that were not good. So I felt like I needed to remind my visitors as well as myself on the fact that I still have a lot, right? It's just my legs, or actually it's belly button down, so it's like hips and butts and legs, but still there's just so much more left, right? So it's not a disaster. It's still opportunities there. And I wrote that list and I put it above my bed so I could look at it every day. So every time, I'd go in and out of my bed and struggle with it, I'd look at that list and think, okay, but I still have all that, I still have all those things. Um, I'd, I'd have visitors coming into the room, and I'd point to the list and go like, look at that first, and then we can talk about this. Because then it's more of a perspective, right? And it's more balanced. And I think in many ways the same applies to sports and the same applies to life, right? Even though you lose something or you underperform or you do something that just isn't completely right, it doesn't ruin what you already have. And in many ways, we'd use that. If I did a bad race, didn't mean that I was a bad athlete. I just did a bad race, right? I still have all those hours of training. I still have all that experience. I still know how to do things. And it's all about reminding myself to stick with that and believe in that and balance it out and not drown in the focus of what could be better, or what is really bad.
I think it is incredible how you always turn the challenges into opportunities. And as you said, that parasports is a lot about focusing about the ability, not the disability that you have. And it seems like that is something that you've focused about since the very start of the accident. And maybe the sport career has been kind of a tool to help you having the right mindset, achieving those goals with becoming strong, and having that mindset to overcome all the challenges.
It's something that absolutely the sport arena has also been a tool where I could explore, all that. Explore my abilities, explore the options. Then it's also been very frustrating because it just hasn't been so easy, right? In sports, it's just not, when you can't use your legs, you just can't go to the store and buy skis or a bike or whatever you need, right? So a lot of the gear that I've had and competed with, I've built myself because there wasn't any there, right? So sport is also, it's about finding the opportunities, and then it's about finding what is my space of movement, what can I do something about? And it gave me an opportunity to really explore the abilities and opportunities that were not necessarily obvious. And it's also been a tool to show the world around that we should not be limited to what we think of each other or see of each other. I think one of the perspectives I've got after I was paralyzed, I'm pretty tall. I'm 180, so I'm a pretty tall woman. Just as tall as like a normal guy. And I was used to being raging pretty high up, and seeing people in their eyesight. And suddenly, when I was in a wheelchair, people started patting my head. And some people even, they didn't talk to me. They would talk to the people that were with me, or they would talk to me in the baby voice, like, "Hi, how are you? Oh, you're so good. You're by yourself, right?" And I feel like, of course, I'm by myself. I'm on my way between studies and training, right?
Yeah.
I'm still a functioning normal human being, I'm just a little bit lower than you. So I just find it so irritating. And I just find like, why? What are you doing? And where does that come from? I just found it very fascinating because having that spinal cord injury is very like from one day to another, right? So all those changes became very obvious because they didn't happen before, but suddenly when I was young, well, it was shorter and in a wheelchair, they happened, and I could see that pattern of treatment just changed. So for me, sport was also a way of showing, no, it doesn't matter whether, you have an arm less than others, so you can't see, or, whether you can't use your legs, you can still deliver on other things, right? And that's what we need to look at. And working with parasports in a way that would make it as visible as possible, which has been one of the key goals in my career, has also been about showing improving ability and showing improving children that, wherever you come from, you're a natural part of our society. Whatever you have with you, we can all be different but still equal. And we should see each other for that, right? We should see each other for that people we are, and not for what we think of each other, maybe even based on very little experience, right? Because very often I think that when we don't treat each other properly, it's also because we don't have the experience. So we don't know how to deal with people that are a little bit different from ourselves. And sports is a very visible arena, as long as you make it visible, though. Because, through times, parasports and women's sports, has not been the most visible. But as long as you get to that stage, it also has this very nice and fine factor that you can just cheer and then you're a part of the team, right? When we're out there competing, I'm Team Norway, right? So it's also an arena which can join forces. What is it to be Norwegian? Who are we, the Norwegians, right? And if you can create some kind of pride and some kind of sense of community, that sense can be bigger than the sensation of differences, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It really does. And I think it's been a very fascinating process that you've been through. And I just want to take a brief moment to tell about, because our podcast is a lot about these kind of things with personal development. We talk about motivation and how to push yourself, how you are responsible for your life. You are responsible to be happy. How are you going to make the changes in your life that you need to become happy? And I've paid attention to your story. I've listened a lot to you talking on different podcasts, and you told about a process that you went through when becoming paralyzed. You ask yourself, what is it that I need to be happy? I don't necessarily need my legs to do this and this and these things and to become happy. And this is a process because we all think we need it, but we kind of take it for granted. So when you come in this situation where you don't have that opportunity to walk, then you just have to kind of go through this mindset. Okay, I don't have my legs, but I can do this. I still have 10 functioning fingers. You wrote in your list, I have 2 functioning eyes. I have people around me that I love. I have the nature. I can do all of these things. And the reason we are called the 101% podcast is that if you really go aim high, you go all in 101%, like you give more than you have, then you will achieve so much great things. Because I think that in general, we limit ourselves. Maybe we go 50% or 80%, or we think we go 100%, but maybe we're not really there. And that's why I think that there is a gap between what we do and what we want to achieve. And if there is a gap between who you want to be and who you are, I think maybe without even knowing it, we start feeling unhappy. We start getting this anxiety sneaking in on us, and we start to have some troubles, and that's why we talk so much about going all in, 101%, give more than you think you have. And this is something you've talked a lot about, that you always give more than you get. You always want to give people more than you expect from them, because you have this naturally in you. And I think it's extremely inspiring and very, very fascinating to hear all these qualities that you have. You are for real a 101%er, and it is so inspiring for us to have you here and to get to know you better.
That's really kind of you to say. But that's what I think was an important aspect there, is that it's important to be aware of where you give it your all, because you cannot give your all everywhere, right? So I think very often we are driven to think that you should be 101%, at home, and 101% at work, and 101% friend, and then you're going to be a 101% in training, right? And then suddenly it's a 404%, and that's just not possible.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that sports really makes you do is that it forces you to focus. So you have to be aware of where you put your all and what does that do to the rest, right? And doing something fully gives you a better chance of really making it. And I just remember so well when I was on the brink of like, okay, should we go for this or should we not, in sports? And there were so many things to do, so many things to prioritize. You know, I was studying, I was working part-time, I was doing sports. Um, I was living in conditions which was a little tricky because I didn't really understand or accept, you know, the challenges that came with the disability. So I just didn't want to live anywhere which was very easy. I just wanted to make sure that and to prove I could still do it, you know, even though it was a little bit difficult. So committing to that goal, which was also very clear because at that point my goal was to medal in Tokyo, and that was the 8 years before. So my plan was, you know, do whatever I could for 8 years to be on that podium in Tokyo. And 8 years is quite a long time, especially if you are 22, because that's pretty much committing to the rest of your 20s. And if you're going to do a PhD, you kind of know that, okay, if I put in all this work and if I do all that, probably I will end up with a PhD, right? But in sports, it's not like you have any promise at all that all the work that you put in is probably going to give you a medal, right? It might put you in position, but it's definitely not promising you anything. So it's also risky doing it, you know, and daring to do it and think that, you know, I can. And in one perspective, that makes it even a little bit more scary to put everything into it because you don't know if you're going to get paid back. But at the same time, it also requires that you do really put your everything into it, because if you don't, you're not going to make it for sure. And having that very measurable goal and being committed to it also made me go through every aspect of my life and look at it and, okay, so how am I aligned with my goal here? Am I making choices? Am I organizing my life? Am I working in a way that is actually working towards the goal that I've set or not? And being pretty tough on that helps you keep on track. And helps you put everything into it. And then we'd use a lot of like very specific tools. Like I'd sit down and say, okay, so this person that will medal or take a goal in 8 years, what do I believe that this person will have of traits? You know, how strong will that person be in specific muscles or movements? What kind of a capacity, like maximum O2 will this person have? You know, how good technical will this person be on this and that? What kind of a mental strength will this person have? You know. And then I'd look at myself as subjective as I could. And I'd also do this in my private life, right? What kind of a life do I want to live? And where am I at the moment now? And what is the difference? And how do I get from where I am now until where I want to go? And when and what time does it take to get there? Look at what you have, where you want to go. What is the difference? Make the goal as measurable as possible. Break it into as clear elements as you can, and then go through everything and see, well, what do I need to tweak on? What do I have to work on? And then it's about prioritizing, right? What do you think is going to give me the biggest outcome working on, you know, for what it takes, to what kind of effect will it give? What am I willing to do? What am I not willing to do? Like in towards the end of my career, I had this moment where a child, which is close to someone very close to me, was sick, and I sat there. And she just had a cold, not a biggie, but still she had a cold, and I knew as an athlete, what I need to do is to say, I'm sorry, I have to go. I can't be with you, you know, because I can't get sick. I can't afford those sick days because that's not aligned with my goal. And I'd step behind and probably leave and sleep somewhere else. But I felt, you know, no, I'm not willing to do that. So instead, I've moved forward and I've embraced the child. and sat with her, and I did get a cold. But that was the right option for me at that moment, you know, and that was one of the moments I realized I'm heading towards the end of my career because I'm not willing to make those choices anymore. Because they're not aligned with the kind of life I want to live and the person I want to be. And that is now more important to me than reaching that medal. And being aware of your own priorities and whether you are actually willing to take the consequences of your goals is also a very important part of rigging yourself for success. Because if you know what you need to do, but you're not willing to do it, then you need to adjust your goal. Then the goal might not be the right one for you, right? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and I think it is very interesting to hear. And what do you think had changed? Because in that moment, you kind of felt that, okay, now I understand something has changed inside of me. I don't have the same goals. I don't have the same priority list. Now, being close to this child, embracing her is more important than isolating myself from family and friends and only think about my goal and only do the right priorities. Had something changed inside of you, you think?
I think that aspect of sport was always the hardest for me.
Yeah.
I'm very dedicated, and friends and family are very close to me and very important to me. And I think the part of sports that made me have to take a step back from the people that I love the most, that was always the most painful part of sports. So it was always hard to do that. It was hard to not be there when people got married or had baptizing their kids, you know, or during vacations. It was always hard to turn my closest friends and family down. But in some way, it was worth it because I knew that what I was working towards was also very important because I wanted to change society with sports. For me, it was never about the medals themselves. It was also about what I could use them for. So it felt important and it felt like it made a difference. And I knew that is what it takes. But then I think that after many years, I was on a national team for almost 12 years. It cost more and more. And I think that is a combination of the fact that I've done it so many times, you know? So in one way, people did get used to it, but in another way, I felt like I felt bad, right? And then I think also because I grew older myself and I got closer to wanting to settle down myself, um, and wanting to show up for the people closest to me. And also I'd say that probably babies don't know what kind of priorities you make, right? And adult people you can rationalize with because you can explain what's going on. With children, it's harder because they can take it as rejection. And it's hard to understand, it's hard to explain why you have to make those choices. And I think that when kids in my closer circle got to the age where they could feel the rejection, that made it harder, right? Because I didn't want them to feel that rejection because I didn't reject them. I made choices for sports, not choices to stay away. And as more kids got to the age where that would be difficult to understand, and then also just the fact that I just want to be there, right? I just want to show up for my friends and family, and it just doesn't feel right. It didn't feel worth it anymore. And that combination of all the years that gone into it, and myself getting older and stepping into a more family-oriented side of life, I guess, did that.
Understand. Is it when you compete at the highest level as you, multiple world champion and Olympic medal, is it sometimes a lonely journey? Because a lot of people, as you talk about, is around you, but they don't actually understand what you have to go through and sacrifice. Do you feel the loneliness sometimes?
I think that, yeah, it is a lonely journey in many ways because there's so many things that you need to do. which is very unsocial. And also just like being away. I have, for the past 12 years, had way more traveling days than I've been home. It's a huge difference to be this much home as I've been now. And I've figured out things with my apartment I didn't know of because I just haven't been there enough to experience it. And I've gotten to know my city in a little bit different way because I've gotten to use it, in a different way than I've had before. It's You're not there for so much of the year, and it's a different life for sure.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
when you're that much on the road, you have to deal with quite many things by yourself. And then it's also all the long trainings, like cross country and rowing, which has been my sports, are both capacity trainings, right? Which has made me having to go out and do hours and hours and hours and hours in training by myself every day, every week, every month, which has also given me huge amounts of space because you can't expect people to come wait on that, and that is my job. So, and also just when I've had friends with me in the cabin, for example, when we've been there over a winter holiday or an Easter, I'd go out early in the morning and train while they'd be in and sit, eat brunch, big brunch, and then they'd come out for a little bit in the middle of the day when I do my second session, but they will maybe be out for 1 hour and I'm going to be out for 4 hours, so they will go back and have Aperol Spritz while I'm training. And then I'm coming back in the afternoon. Well, they've already eaten lunch, and they have some spares in the fridge, and I just throw that in, like eat that really quickly until I go and have strength training when they start preparing dinner, right? So you kind of have the schedule, which is on the side of what everyone else does, and also because I've traveled so much, I've usually haven't been there when things have happened, right? I'm not there when they get married. I'm not there when they have birthday. I'm not there when they have kids. I'm not there when they graduate because I'm always gone. And that's also a part of it that makes it a little bit lonely because you're so physically disconnected to what's going on. But then I'd also just say that during the last 12 years that I've been a part of this, it's been a huge difference. Just because of technology, right? Just because of being able to do video calls, it's a huge difference, and it's a really good one.
And it's been quite a journey, and you kind of talked us through that things started changing within you. You became more family oriented, and saying no to children came to a point where it got too hard. It had been hard all along, but now you're in the chapter where you're pregnant, about to give birth to a little son. Congratulations so much on that. What a blessing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really exciting. Really.
Joakim has a daughter, and we have talked a lot about raising children. We had an entire episode about this in episode 18 about the importance of raising your children in a good way. It is the most important job we have in this world, and it would be very interesting to hear from you. Do you have some thoughts about the lessons you want to give, and what are some of the most important values to have in a role as a parent?
This is maybe one of the most important things to do, right? What I've thought through is that I want to try to give my children or my child stability, connectivity, a sense of community. There are so many things that's important to make us happy, which are not necessarily the same as to perform, right? And being aware on what kind of language to use, right? How we talk about other people, creating trust. I find those things very interesting. And for me, they relate to also being a teammate, right? And team member. Also with the co-parent. We've talked a lot about that, how we need to settle things together. We might not always agree, but as far as we can, try to be aligned and create that, community sense within the family. And then I think it's really important that they grow up with this understanding and sensation that we need to be a society where people are different,
Mhm.
because we are different, and that's a strength. And that's one of the things that I find a little almost scary, I'd say, when I look at society today, because we're really good at pointing out differences. We're really good at pointing out and arranging, right? What is better or what is worse?
Mhm.
Um, and and I worked with television quite a lot throughout the years, and I also find it very interesting just to hear how people are talking about people on television, right? Just like, look at that nose, or look at that leg, or look at that, that person is very short or tall, or, pointing out the physical differences, which I do believe go very deep in us. And we are, as humans, trained to making our little community, but that's also that then you also define who is not a part of that community, right?
Mhm.
So making sure that my children at least grow up with this understanding and sensation that we're all a part of that community together. And differences does not have to mean that something is better or worse. It is just different. I
Mhm.
think that's just a groundbreaking, very, it's just such an important thing. And to be kind. And if you look at what makes people happy, for example, working for others, doing something good for other people,
Mhm.
has proven to make you happy.
Mhm.
And it does create a sense of community, right? So also for the children to grow up and understand that they are connected to their surroundings, and that we need to take responsibility for each other.
Mhm.
We have to reach out, right? And be a good community member. And that's one of the most important things that we do to build that strength.
Mhm.
So I really hope to succeed with that. And also, it's just interesting how the world is expanding. Just from I'm born in the 80s, late 80s. Did not have a cell phone until I was a teenager. We just had this old internet where you had to connect through the phone lines, right? Um, just seeing the difference children are growing up with today, even from my own growing up, and thinking about how life will be very different for them when they turn 20. I think that one of the key things they need to master is the ability to change. It's the ability to adapt. It's the ability to form, because the world as we know it is not going to stick around. It will change.
Mhm.
And the better they are at accommodating that, and working with that, the better cards they have to operate in it, right? And a part of that is also to be connected to the people around you, because you can create machines that can do quite a bit, but they cannot be human to the very extent we are human, and being connected to the people around you, that's not going to run off for a long time.
That is so true, and I think there are great lessons, and I think it's extremely important what you say about how to kind of build those qualities to adapt, and those
Mm.
qualities, those tools, because we have the responsibility to give our children the tools to cope with this world, to not feel like they are alone, to not feel like they have to handle everything alone, but to give them something to help them along the path of life in a way.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And I think that those kind of flexible mindsets is also a superpower,
Mhm.
because the amount of change that our children's generations will have to live through
Mhm.
is breathtaking.
Mhm.
And the more open-minded they are, and the more solution-oriented they are, and the more flexible they are,
Mhm.
the easier that change is going to be. So it's about finding those traits and tools. What do
Mhm.
you think, Joakim, about your child?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's the best thing you can have in your life is children, and I totally agree with you. That's the most important job parents have, is to give a good life for their children and prepare them for the world. So I think it's so important, yeah, to be present, yeah, to be in the moment. I see parents just sit and look at their phone, and if you answer only 50%, so I always try to be 101% together with my daughter, and have her full attention. And now she have become older, so amazingly enough, she not want to spend so much time with me. I don't know why. And when she comes sometime and she would like to spend some time, I throw away everything I do and I make time together with she. So it's important, and I try to learn she good things. Good values. She have to learn to love herself, be respectful to others, create good connection, and be a great and respectful person. Also, learn she have to train, take care of her health, work about her mindset. So that's I try to implement in her.
Sounds like really great and important things.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And before, from 2007 to 2013, I actually lived in Thailand. I live in Pattaya for 6 years.
Wow, what did you do there?
I worked 2 months in Norway, and then I live in Thailand for 2 months. Me and my brother and a friend traveled down to Thailand in 2007, and we was there 2 weeks, and I fell in love with the country. There was great people, good weather, very good food, and it was amazing to be here. So we traveled back to Norway again, and I went straight out to the bank. I told them I need to buy me a new car, So I borrowed 50,000 Norwegian kroner, and after 2 weeks, me and my brother flew back to Thailand, and I blew away all the money in 2 weeks. And after that, we go home again, and then we decide we're gonna move to Thailand. So I actually moved to Thailand then.
Wow. What did you do in Thailand then?
I drank and party every day. So that was not so good. It was the first 4 years. It was very funny. A lot of friends come visiting, drink and partying a lot, travel a lot around the Thailand, and just live the good life. And after 4 years, I became so alcoholic. I actually became an alcoholic. So
No way.
because I drank all the day, all the time, and at the end, I drank all day, went to sleep at night, and when I wake up in the morning, I used to take 8 beer for breakfast just to get my day started going again. So the last 2 years was a nightmare. It was heavy just to get to the day, and I feel so miserable. So in 2030, I have to up with the white flag. Okay, I give up, and I broke up with my Thai wife, and I took my daughter on 1.5 year back to Norway, and I was in rehab for 4.5 months. And no, at the end of this month now, I have been sober for 12 years. So it's life is great.
Wow, good job. What made you make that decision?
I was in a very bad place in life, didn't feel any happiness, nothing. And I think that it was a lot of pressure from my family as well. And I want to take she home because I own she that. I want to make a safe life for she. So then I went to rehab. And to everyone out there who have problem with drugs or alcohol, you have to go in rehab because that's the only way out. Because you have to learn to think and live in a new way. So that was the backside of the Thailand.
Yeah.
And
Sorry. Yeah, what did you say?
And in the future, one of me and Annika's goal is to, when we get success on this podcast and get financial success, we would like to build a big orphanage in Thailand for poor and unprivileged children to give them a safe life, education, and a good life. And I read that you actually, after high school, went to Thailand and worked as a voluntary at a orphanage. Can you please tell us about this experience?
Of course. Well, after high school, I had a gap year. I was waiting to get into a study abroad. I was just waiting for a surgery because I needed to have a surgery on my jaw. And while I was waiting for that, I figured, I might as well do something good because I felt very lucky to grow up in Norway. I had spent 1 year in the US throughout high school as an exchange student. I've seen that some people are very privileged, right? And some people are really not. The American society is a society of huge contrasts. And I felt very vividly that I'd been lucky to grow up in Norway, and just the fact that we are born here gives us a huge advantage. And I felt like when I have capacity to do something which can also make a difference for someone else, I wanted to do that. And the brother of one of the people in my class in high school, he had run into lots of kids in Thailand that didn't have parents because there had been lots of fighting. This was on the border to Myanmar. And he had started an orphanage and had 64 kids in this orphanage. So I asked him, "Do you need any help? You know, I have some spare time. Would you mind me coming down and helping out?" And he was like, "Sure, come. Always need help." And that was it was very humbling experience, I'd say, because we then had 64 children that were orphaned or had very alcoholized parents or parents that were traumatized by the war in some way. And then I moved into uh, a different orphanage after a couple of weeks with 16 kids. You know, I was 19 years old and 16 children. The youngest was 3 years old and the oldest was 16. And their stories, they didn't have papers. They were refugees from Myanmar. They didn't have papers. They were living on the border. And then I worked teacher in local school. So I was working with lots of children in the area that were also refugees. And we were in and out of a couple of the UN camps that are in the area. You know, one of the UN camps there had 65,000 inhabitants. And there were just refugees just waiting to be placed somewhere in the world, you know, not having passports, not having papers, which did not give them the opportunity to have a job, you know, where you would need papers. They'd work on the black market, and didn't have many rights, you know, and many of the kids too. I was teaching in English, and many of them said, "Why would we learn English? You know, we don't have a future anyway." So why bother? So it was just very humbling and also very connecting. They were amazing. I just love them so much, the kids. And um they would go into the jungle and go hunting for animals, you know, that we'd have for dinner. We didn't have much money. So, you know, eating meat, for example, was just off the table because that was way too expensive. So we'd just eat vegetables, which would have to go to a market pretty far away to get a hold of, right? And I was working as a teacher, but then I would also cook, and I'd clean clothes that we'd clean in a well. So we'd like go there and have a bucket into like one of these like old wells, right? And you drag it up with a rope and then put the water in a big bucket, and then we'd wash the clothes from by hand and then hang them up to dry. So all of my clothes had this metal marker because the threads that we put them on was a metal thread, so that all leave like iron marks on all my clothes. But that was just how it was, right? Because that's what we had. And still, you know, the kids were amazing in their way to find joy and happiness and everyday laughter. And they just proved in so many ways that you don't have to have the material greatness to be able to live a fine life, right? And also, I felt really bad that I could just pick up my red passport and go back to Norway, and they were stuck just because they were born a different place. So I've always kept, you know, after I was paralyzed, the kids sent me drawings. So I had on my walls in the hospital, which is pretty amazing.
Mm. That
Very,
is,
very nice thing to do. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
sounds like a very good and great experience. What they say, living is giving.
yeah, right.
that is so true. And you are definitely the kind of person that enriches everyone that you meet. And I see that for you, it's extremely important to give your good values to all the people that you meet, to create a better society, to include everyone. And now we're in the beginning of July, but as this episode is released in the end of September, early October, you have just published a book. And
Yeah.
do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh gosh, that's the other baby I'm working on. It
Which
really
one
feels
is
like it though. No, it's the book is stories, different kind of stories from different parts of life. In some way, it's kind of an autobiography, even though I do find it a little bit difficult to say I'm doing a biography being 36 years old. But it's about stories because I do really strongly believe in telling each other stories about life, about connections, about, you know, trying to do our best, about development, because we can learn so much from each other. And we can learn so much from looking at what people have done right and also what people have done wrong. And I do love to read books myself, and I find it very interesting, especially to read books that will give me a different dimension, give me different perspectives to the life that I'm a part of, right? Because world and society is just so much more than the little bubble that we're all living in. So what I'm hoping to do with this book is to present a bubble which is parallel in many ways to society for a lot of people. It's about giving perspectives, both with, you know, living with a disability and what, you know, how differences can look, even though they're straight ahead of you, but also how to work through challenges, even though there's absolutely no recipe in any way, just some perspectives and science and experience on living through pretty dramatic change in the thinking behind the way that I worked to get through things. A lot of it that didn't work very well. So it's like, don't do this at home. This was not a good idea, but still important to talk about. Other things is about life and the world and more global perspectives, with kind of values do we want to live by? What is life, you know? What is death? I was really sick at a period of time too, you know, and didn't know if I was going to survive or not. What kind of thoughts went through my mind at that crossroad, you know, and how did I bring that with me later? So it's a lot of different stories put together to show and tell different parts of life in a way that hopefully can both give perspectives and give room for reflections for people reading it. And there was a lot of these publishers that came to me and offered me to write books with them, and many of them said, well, you can write your own story. And I really have to say, I'm not motivated by writing my own story. I feel like that's not important. But what is important is to see, you know, is there any learning here? Is there any interesting elements here that will be relevant for others? And that's what I've tried to do, because it's not in any way any kind of a self-help book, or just me wanting to tell my own story. It's stories that can give reflection and connection and present some cases that most people are happy to not get into, like injury and illness, but that are still relevant to other kind of changes. And going back to what we talked about earlier, I think that adaptation and change is one of the things that also our generation will have to deal with because of all the dramatic changes that's in front of us. And addressing some methods for changing yourself and for changing society is important to master that.
Awesome. And you have so many great tools to give away. What a gift this book is to the world, I think, with stories that you put together, because you are an extremely inspiring character. Recently, there was a show published in Norway, Team Pulsa, where a group of youths are facing a challenge. They're training up to a world championship race, and they're in a point of discouragement. Things are rough, and as soon as you just come towards them skiing, you see they just awaken with positivity, with hope, with encouragement. Before you even open your mouth and say anything, just by you entering, they feel so happy. And that is the kind of effect you have on many people. My first meeting with you was was back 13 years ago when you were on the show No Limits. That was also when you were a part of a team, you were facing a challenge, you were going through a race, and you just had so many great qualities. You pushed yourself until you passed out, you know. And also we got to know you a bit on the personal level, because you talked a lot about that you did not want to be a burden. You, as I remember it, you thought it was very difficult to be pushed by the others on the team, because sometimes they had to lift your wheelchair or push you up the mountain that you were hiking. And it seems like you have these personal qualities that you don't want to be a burden for anyone. You want to give more than you get. You want to enrich, and you always do. You always turn on the lights wherever you go. And I just want to ask you, where does this come from? How? Because when I look at you, I think that you have an incredibly amount of resilience, positivity, inner strength, and the mentality that we have been talking about, both in sports as an athlete, but also in facing challenges. Where does this resilience and inner strength come from? Is it something you bring along from your childhood, or is it something that you have worked on very with your awareness?
I think it's both. When I grew up, my mother would say that I was so difficult to discuss and debate with, that I should be a politician. She was like, because I was just asking questions to everything and thinking, you know, how can we do this better? How can we do this different? It was a pain in the ass for my parents. I tell her things like, you know, you don't have to think that you have a natural authority just by being my mom. You have to come up with some better arguments. and and that was also a stubbornness that came into wanting to do things by myself and wanting to make sure that I contribute as much as I could. And I think that's maybe also one of the things that we grew up with, you know, not being a burden, but give more than you take. And that mindset's been pretty difficult, I'd say, after I was paralyzed, because it is like I didn't want the others to push me because I wanted to make it myself. I didn't want them to use strength on getting me moving forward. I had a very interesting discussion with one of the people working on that show a couple of years later, where I asked him, why did you bring me? I was the most disabled person in that group. I was heavy, you know, it was hard. We had to have this wheelchair, really big mountain wheelchair with us. You know, why did you bring me? It would be so much easier for the others if I just wasn't there. And he looked at me and he's like, you still haven't got it, have you? And I was like, got what? And he's like, you were the one pushing the others, but you did it mentally. We needed your head.
Wow.
And that maybe gave me a realization that, aha, it's just so easy to see the physical part. And I think this applies to so many parts of society too, right? It's very easy to see the physical hindrance, or, you know, what you cannot do physically, while you're just as much assets and valuable with the not so physical parts of it, right? I needed to be a good teammate, and that was my role there. I needed to be the one that made sure everyone was as happy as they could be, right? And that was also what I was focusing on that series. It was, of course, pushing as much as I could physically myself, but then also making sure to make a bonfire, cooking, asking the others how they were doing, being a good person to talk to, pushing the others, you know, moving forward. So it's about finding your own role. And that was maybe one of the things that I was struggling a little bit with after my injury, just to find that role again, because it changed. And then I've, throughout the years, become less scared to be that kind of a burden in a way, because no one is just one thing. We're several things, and we are different, and we need different things. We need different adaptations. And we also do need to accept that we cannot give all the time. One of the most important aspects of living in a society is that we help each other. So it's more like everyone out on an expedition together, and then we change around who carries the heaviest backpack, depending on who has the strongest legs that day, right? And it's completely okay to not be the strongest all the time. And it's completely okay to not ever be the strongest. And that's why it's better for all of us to be together, because we need everything. We need the people that are pushing each other mentally, and we need the people that are pushing each other physically. And we also do need to not arrange those, right? And say that one is more worth than the other just because they're more visible, for example. And we have to also accept ourselves that we cannot be 101% all the time. But when we are 101%, then we should help out for the people around us, right? And in that way, more of us will make it there in the end, and we're going to have a much more fun ride.
One thing I would like to ask you about, Birgit, is how do you avoid burnout? Me and Annika have been burnout so many times, but we have been better and better. But what is your best advice?
Oh gosh, I'm the worst person to ask. I definitely don't have a life which is, according to what it should be. But I've been close to it a couple of times too, and I think what is important is to be aware of your signals, be aware of what you're doing, be aware of what do I actually need, what is the smart thing to do, and what am I actually doing, and what's the difference, and how long can I do that? Try to be connected to how much you're burning the candle in both sides. And also know yourself as much as you can. Like at the moment, I'm writing a book. I'm working really hard to hit the deadline of the manuscript, and I am really pregnant, and we are renovating our apartment. And I have a couple of projects that I've been trying to land before the baby comes. So I'm definitely working way too hard, and I did not anticipate, how physically rough it would be to be this pregnant. So one of the things I'm doing at the moment is to trying to listen and be clear to my surroundings, and for example, I just haven't seen friends for such a long time because I just haven't had the capacity to do it, just to try to land the other things that I need to do. But I also know I can't be running like that forever. So being aware of what are you doing, how far overstretching are you, and when will you stop do that?
So
And try to, uh, because we can all run really, really fast for periods of time, but we cannot do it all the time. So be connected to yourself, I'd say, is really important, and make sure to plan for your own shortcomings. So, for example, I am planning really to have a couple of weeks where I don't have any obligations after the baby is born, just to make sure that I have the space I need to recover and to get to know the baby. Also try to balance my year. I have really worked through plans on my year, and I break it down to like half years, and then months, and then weeks, and then days, and I try to plan them accordingly, according to what is actually possible to live through over time, and say no.
oh,
It's hard, but say no.
sounds great advice. And another thing I would like to ask you about, I'm very curious about. Annika, yeah, my sister, she is the most busiest person I ever met in my life. And some years ago, she lived in Trondheim and did take a bachelor degree about social worker. And at the same time, she trained MMA for 20 hours a week. She was on a lot of trips with her friends, did a lot of things with they. And at the time, she actually worked beside of all that also. And often when me and Annika talk, she will send a message for me on Sunday. On Friday, 8:20 at night. Do you have time for I can call you? That's just to show how busy she was. And I, of course, she had time. Okay, I have to take it. And when we did a lot of research about you, Birgit, and I see all the things you've done, heavy competition and training for 12, 13 years. You was inside the politic. You developed equipment for the Paralympic athletes. And you was working for World Economic Forum, and the list goes on and on. And at first, when I read about everything you do, first I think, okay, this is Annika. And after I read more, this is actually Annika 2.0, Birgit. You are so busy, Birgit. How do you do it? This have to be planning on the highest level and time management on a higher level as well. How you do it, Birgit?
It's very structured planning, that's right. It's also being a complete workaholic. And then I think that, when you get used to being that busy, it's a lifestyle too, right? And it's very scheduled, planned ahead, and maybe not for forever. I hope to have a little bit more balanced life after I get kids. And I think maybe you have to too. It's easier to live that way. Sorry. It's easier to live that way when you don't have family obligations.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very before and after.
Understand. So, do you have some favorite quote you would like to share?
It's going to work out. We just have to figure out how.
Beautiful.
What about you guys? Do you have any favorite quotes?
I have one. That's one I come up with myself. Life is a fight. If you fight smart and well, life will be amazing.
That is awesome. I am such a quotes person, so I always have a lot, but right now I just remembered one that our mother taught us as we were talking about what we just talked about. She told me that when you say no to something, you say yes to something else, because
Yes.
I would always feel so guilty if I said no to someone. But she taught me that you cannot say yes to everything. So when you say no to, for example, hanging out with your friends one day, that means that you can say yes to taking care of your training schedule or this and that, So that's the one that was stuck in my mind right now.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
And I think it goes very close to our priority list. When you are a top athlete, that was on the top of your priority list. And then as the time has changed, maybe now it's family, it's some of the things that you have to get finished before the little boy comes here, and then that's what you say yes to, So it's always good choices. We have to plan, but I think it's so important that we always make decisions based on our values to be happy.
Yeah.
Right now I need to be done with this project, and then that's what you're saying yes to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's a really good quote. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there something more that you have on your mind that you would like to share with us?
I think I'd just like to say thank you very much for reaching out. And I think that the attitude that you guys have, which is searching and open and sharing, connecting, is exactly what we need moving forward. And it's been really nice to hang out with you. And really appreciate being able to come by and hope that you have a really nice summer. And I'm really excited to also keep listening to what you guys are making. And I'm impressed with, how broad it is, how much different voices. And we need to do more of that, listen to more different voices, understand and be open to each other's stories and lives. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind word, Birgit, and it was an honor to have you on our podcast, and so nice to get to know you more. You have been a true inspiration for us for a long time. And also have a good summer for you, and good luck so much with your baby.
Thank you very much.
I also want to say thank you so much. You for sure are not just a spark, but a flame of inspiration and motivation and fuel and so much purpose. The things that you talk about and are interested in about is for sure something that everyone has to learn from you. I think everyone has something to learn from you, and thank you so much. Your values paint the world in the most beautiful colors, and I just want to say thank you for that you are you and that you took the time to be with us. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And have a great summer and fall.
You too. All the best to you.
Thank you.
This episode was recorded the 9th of July 2025. In the show notes below, you will find the link to where to find Birgit and her new book. You will also find a link to our homepage, the 101percentpodcast.com, where you can donate to support our show. We would also appreciate if you can share this episode with a friend to help us spread this beautiful message. Take care and give it your best.
It is important for us to get out our message so we can help as many people as possible. And we would highly appreciate it if you could take 1 minute of your time to follow us on social media and review the show on Apple Podcast and Spotify. All links are below. Our Instagram is the 101% podcast. Until next time, take care and go 101% into achieving your goals. You owe it to yourself.